In this video, we have been talking about the units of a computer architecture, the things that make a computer. And we want to look back into history, specifically what Charles Babbage had proposed in the 1800s, and see that does it have the pieces that we think of that make up a computer? Does it have the overall properties of a computer? And does it have the pieces that we think are essential for making a computer a computer? There have been devices that have helped us with calculating, sort of going back as far as the abacus, but that's not a computer. A computer has to be programmable. So in the 1800s, and I'm not going to do the full history of Babbage, I'm just going to sort of say what he had and does it fit our sort of definition here. So in the 1800s, Charles Babbage proposed two machines, and they were, to different degrees realized. So one was the difference engine, and the other one the analytical engine. And the difference engine was sort of to a fair degree built, not completely, but to push to a pretty far. And then the analytical engine was more like in the proposed stage. But particularly the second one, the analytical engine, was the more ambitious one and became sort of programmable. And there were at least proposed programs for it, even though it wasn't built. And so down there we have in the corner a picture of Ada Lovelace, and she was a contemporary, and she wrote papers on writing programs for the proposed machine. Okay. So it was a mechanical machine. Our computers these days are electronic, use transistors, but this is all about sort of gears and cogs and such. Um, and it was built later to the specifications to see if it would indeed work. Babbage had a thing, and what's shown in this picture here is a thing called the mill. So he didn't use the terms we use today of like CPU and memory. He used terms like the mill and the store, sort of terms borrowed from his time. And so I give you another link to a different YouTube that shows that when this engine was built, sort of it's just beautiful to watch it sort of take place. That this sort of underneath all these gears, flipping and turning, is some calculation being done. So in his mind, there was the store, which is what we would call memory, and distinct from storage. But the store is this sort of more temporary thing and holds numbers that are being calculated or part of the calculation as it's proceeding. And that is the memory. There was the mill, what we showed in the picture before, and that's where the actual computation takes place. So this would be our combination of control and ALU, or its CPU, if you will. And then there was some way to input to get like the data and instructions input, and it used punch cards. And then there was some kind of output. Again, it could be some kind of punching or some kind of like make a imprint on a copper plate or something, some way to have some output. So it had our basic units. It was programmable to distinguish it from some kind of other calculating device. And it has our basic units that we think make up the architecture. And so again, here is another. So that first video I referred to, if you want to look into further, was just sort of they built it and they just sort of show it in motion. whereas this video talks more about the pieces and the history. And so we see there the store, the mill, the and it was could be sort of small versions could be cranked, but it could be run by a steam engine. There are places where you can those sort of violet things where they say variable cards and operation cards. That is where you are sort of putting instructions in and data in, and so that that's what makes it programmable. And then there's some results coming out printer. So it had the input in the cards, the output in the printer. It had the store, which was like memory. It had the mill, which was like the CPU, the control, and the ALU. They were mechanical, so it's gears and cogs and things like that. The store, the memory, uh, held as many as, at least in the proposed, as many as 1,000 words of 50 decimals. So he was doing calculations, computing. And so the digits were decimal digits and they were as many as 50 digit long. And then there could be up to 1,000 of them. And then the processor was capable of um, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. And it also had in the analytical machine some possibility of if, so that you could do sort of some kind of coding where you didn't, that there was some kind of branching. Okay. So it used, for the input came in the version of punch cards. Punch cards were already existed. They were brought from the sort of weaving industry. So earlier in the 1800s, uh, the weaving industry started to use cards to make the designs that were being weaved, sort of encoding them in these punch cards. And so that became a way to encode data and bring it in. And that was used by Babbage to bring things in. So part of the input. And punch cards sort of hung around from the looms in the early 1800s until like the 1980s. So almost like 200 years of punch cards. Um, and it was the input was not just data but instructions, so that made it sort of programmable, that you could change what was being calculated and what data was being acted on. And it even had, as we said, some kind of to figure out if something was positive or negative, which can affect as an if. And then there was a way to either punch things, either paper or something a little harder, an engraver's plate, and that gave us sort of an output, a hard copy. And so here's just a picture of a sort of a punch card being used in this loom context. And then here's a video if you want to see in more detail, like how the punch card served as input in the loom. And then just sort of a caveat of Babbage did a lot, but he also had a lot of problems, and that he kept designing and redesigning and sort of extending. So like that first proposed engine then did not do as much. The difference engine was like well along the way and sort of almost abandoned because he had this better idea of the analytical machine, and it was a better idea and programmable. And but on the other hand, it meant that this changing of concept meant that the original concept never got completely realized, and the second project really never got realized as he sort of made the words bigger, more words, and longer words, and so it kept expanding, and so it had this problem of what we would call scope creep, and it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger that it became sort of impossible to realize. So I'll end there with that sort of warning about problems with projects. And that'll be it for this one. Thanks for your attention.